Welcome back, literary slummers, to another episode of Hate Read. I'm Em.
And I'm Anna. Every fortnight here on Hate Read, one of us challenges the other to read a book that we think they will hate. This past fortnight, I challenged Em to read the book Juliet, Immortal by Stacey J. So, first things first, Em, did you finish this book?
I did.
Yay!
Okay, I don't know. Okay, here... I'm trying to stop saying here's the thing. Okay, we went over this last time.
So here's the thing.
Okay. Every time we do one of these, I feel like it is my least favorite book I've ever read. This isn't the worst book we've read by far. Like, there are far worse books that we've covered on this podcast.
This is true.
However, I've sat with it for about a day now, and I think this might be my least favorite book that I've ever read. I was really upset by this book, and some of it wasn't the book's fault. Some of it was like extraneous stuff, which we'll get into when we get there, but like I really hated this book. And I think part of it is because I was like kind of confused actually when you challenged me to read this, because you said like, oh, you were looking for an adaptation, and that's like a thing that I really like, is adaptations of stuff. But I shouldn't have doubted you, because this was this was a lot of things that I should like.
Yeah, I was really worried when you said you
wasn't.
thought you had it. You were like, I think I own this book. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, it was. I don't understand why it was an adaptation. I don't know.
It could have been any two people.
Why were we pretending this was Romeo and Juliet? That was weird. The fact that it was Romeo and Juliet, which is, as we kind of mentioned last week, one of the less good Shakespeare plays, depending how you read it and what you're reading it, or, you know, watching it, depending like what you're watching it for, reading it for. Yeah,
it's my least favorite, so.
I don't want to, I did say it was less good. It's not that it's not good. Like, I don't want to have a bunch of angry Shakespeare nerds getting at me, but
I do. Come at me.
Okay, so at Anna on this one. But yeah, it's definitely not one of my favorites. So it's like not great source material, weird use of source material.
Extremely weird.
Yeah, and it's like, again, the kind of premise of it sounds like something that maybe not something I would read now, but definitely something I would have been into as a teen. Like
in 2011,
yeah, like of the doomed lovers separated by time and fate and all that sort of shit. Like that seems like a thing I could, you know, be down for. But I just really hated this book a lot. Like a lot. I'm really sorry, Stacey J. I'm sure you're a nice person, but like,
I'm sure you have other better books, because the writing was not the worst.
I hated the writing. I'm sorry. No, I hated the writing. It was
super purple, but like...
I mean, if you're into that, cool. But like... it was a lot. Okay. I guess we should talk about what this book is.
Yeah, why don't we get into this super fun plot of light versus dark?
Yeah. That's always good. Okay. So, we open. It is Verona, Italy, 1304. There is a bunch of purple prose about Romeo and Juliet and how they love each other.
They're doing the nasty.
And they're doing the do. And that's it. So there's a fun... It's not really even like a sex scene, because it's a YA sex scene, so it's not like we're getting into it or anything. It's just like, I felt his breath across my collarbone and like all that sort of thing, where it's like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, there are zero wing-wangs in this book.
Yeah, no wing-wangs, guys. So, fast forward. We are now in California. And, okay, here's
not the thing.
Here's the situation with this book. There are like maybe 5 characters if you look at it one way, but like 100 characters if you look at it another way. Because there's a lot of like body sharing and like different versions of the same character.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the character that we were just introduced to as Juliet wakens in a new body of a girl named Ariel. So for the purposes of this podcast, when it is Juliet in Ariel's body, I will be referring to them as Jeriel.
Jeriel, yes.
So Jeriel awakes. She has been in a car accident, except it's not really an accident.
It's an accident of her own making.
Yeah, so Ariel, the person who is the body that Juliet is now inhabiting, before Juliet inhabits it, we find out.
Pre-Juliet Ariel.
Pre-Juliet Ariel. Jeriel minus the J. Is this, like, depressed artist girl who went on a date with this boy named Dylan. Except it turns out that Dylan was only doing it for a bet. She's all batting the situation.
Yeah.
He tells her, and she freaks the fuck out and purposely crashes the car in order to kill herself and Dylan. Like, that's what's happening, right?
Girl goes bonkers.
She's trying to kill herself. And I don't know if she's really trying to kill Dylan or if she's just an asshole who doesn't consider that this will have, you know, like,
other consequences. Yeah.
I'm like, I get it. You're mad at him.
But you can't just kill a dude.
Yeah.
Because the thing was, like, that he accepted a bet that he could sleep with her, but then she found out before they slept together, so they never actually did it.
Right.
So, like, the consequence of the story is, I guess, like, you can be mad at Dylan, but, like, that doesn't constitute taking his life.
Yes, and, like, Juliet never blames Ariel for this.
No one ever talks about it.
Right. Juliet,
it's just a thing that happened.
To be fair, Jeriel doesn't care because Juliet doesn't care. And then Dylan dies, essentially. Little bit ahead, but Dylan dies. So there's not really anyone else who knows about the situation. But, like, Juliet was an outsider who came into this situation, and she's always like, anytime she talks about Dylan, she's like, wow, if he grew up, he'd be a murderer. Oh my gosh, he's so terrible. He's the worst. And I'm like,
a sociopath.
Right, but Ariel actually tried to, and succeeded in killing someone, though. Like,
so who's the real sociopath there?
And I mean, they're both 18, so, like, yeah, there's room for, they have room to grow, but, like, the fact that nobody, the thing that is sad about this situation is that, oh, poor Ariel, she wanted to kill herself, and I'm like, right, but she also tried to kill a man.
She also did murder.
She did a bad thing, like.
But yeah, it does get just so glossed over. It just, and part of that is that there's a lot of action that occurs in this scene that we'll talk about next, I'm sure. But, like, the accident happens, the consequences aren't exactly what they would be because of a thing, but Dylan does die.
Yeah, Dylan's dead.
Ariel does kill a person, but no one cares.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess no one else really knows besides Juliet.
Well, yeah, that Ariel did it, but assumably when Juliet leaves Ariel's body, that's Dylan will still be dead and Ariel will still be there.
That's a plot line that needs to get wrapped up in the sequel to this, which exists.
And I can't wait.
So Jeriel comes to and is like, we get a whole bunch of Purple Prose info dump about how...
Oh, so much. Boring.
Juliet... Okay, so Juliet died, except she got saved at the last second by Nurse, who is actually a member of the good side, who are kind of like angels, kind of like vampires, whatever, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Angelic vampires.
They're called the Ambassadors, and they're fighting against this group that's called the Mercenaries. So the Ambassadors recruited Juliet, so now she hangs out in, like, the void between life and death, and occasionally comes back to Earth and has to find two people who are on the brink of true love, which she does by seeing their magic pink auras. And when they become they fall in true love, the auras become red, and she knows she did a good. Mm-hmm. And she is often thwarted in this goal by Romeo, who did the whole thing with the Juliet dying
It's like,
in order...
Like the end of Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah,
Spoiler alert.
In order to become a mercenary so that he could live forever. Sort of, but it turns out not really. Anyway, so he becomes a mercenary, so he's supposed to stop Juliet, and he gets to stay on Earth and inhabit corpses, but gets to do stuff, essentially. So Juliet's real salty about the fact that she doesn't get to, like, do things in between her little jaunts as Cupid.
Yeah, because she's like, I've only lived on the Earth about 20 years, but Romeo has lived 700 years.
Right.
And because he just gets to hop from corpse to corpse and, like, kind of bring them back to life. Like, he doesn't look like a corpse. He is...
Yeah.
Looks like a regular person.
So, we get all this info dump. Mm-hmm. And then Jeriel is, like, looks over to check on Dylan or something. And Dylan, it turns out, has been possessed by Romeo. So, he will be referred to from now on as Dromeo. So, Jeriel and Dromeo have a big old fight. They get some punching in. I think Dromeo's head gets, like, dented by her shoving it into the car or something. I don't know.
I think into, like, the rearview mirror or the ceiling of the car or something. Like, he gets a hole in his head.
So that's fun. Jeriel climbs out the sunroof.
Yes.
And then runs towards civilization. And is trying...
And scales a cliff.
Oh, yeah. Scales a cliff. And runs towards civilization and is, like, trying to figure out how to get away from Dromeo. And she sees a car, and she flags down the car. And the guy stops, and she gets in the car. And then they have, like, a 20-minute conversation about how he needs to drive. And she jumps into the driver's seat while he's sitting in it to try to drive the car.
Yes, this is so frustrating.
Which, like, I was like, this is ineffective. And
it took them, like... Okay, so first of all, she can't find the accelerator in the car. Mm-hmm. And neither can the driver of the car. And I'm like, there's two pedals.
Right.
And
like,
his foot was assumably on one of them.
18 different times where it's like, I scrambled desperately with my foot trying to find the gas. And I'm like, there are only so many places.
Yeah.
The gas pedal could be. Like, what
They're
is she?
in a Corolla.
Like, she's, like, upside down in his lap, pressing her foot against the ceiling. Like, I don't know where it is.
I can't find how to make cargo.
How do cargo?
And it's not a case of, like, oh, the last time she was alive, they didn't have cars. It was, like, the last time she was on Earth was 15 years before that. So
it's just, like, she can't figure out. He's trying to ramp up the tension in just this, like, really way too drawn out way.
Awkward way.
So the guy, whose name is Ben, is like, hi, why do you want me to drive the car? And she's like, just drive the car. And he's like, but why drive car? And she's like, we have to go, my date is gonna kill us. And he's like, but I don't, why drive car? What do you mean? What do you mean, date? What do you mean, kill? What? And then finally, after, like, 10 minutes of this, Romeo, like, comes pounding on the door, and Ben's like, oh, shit, better go. So they drive away.
But not before Romeo punches his fist through
the
window. Oh, yeah. That's what finally makes him like, oh, I should have listened to you.
Right.
You weren't kidding.
Like, this girl who's desperate, who's, like, bleeding profusely, and is like, we need to go. This is how people die in horror movies. Like,
yes. Not to mention, like, if a woman is in this kind of state and she's, like, you know, trying to get away, and she says, like, a guy is after me, like, just do her a solid, dude. Just like, get her out of there. Don't point, try and get the whole story before you trust her. Work out the details
later.
Yeah, like...
if you already stopped your car to let her in, like, I get, you know, maybe not wanting to pick random people up in your car because they might be a murderer, but, like, she's already in your car. If you already
took that first step.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, if she's gonna murder you, she's gonna murder you. You're on a deserted highway anyway. If she wanted to, this would be a good place to murder you. So there's really no reason that you shouldn't drive to a less murdery place. Like, fucking stupid.
So dumb.
So then we get some more info dump about Ariel and her life before Juliet stole her body, which, to be clear, Ariel's spirit is still somewhere out there and she will come back to this body later.
Yes, and will be given false memories and stuff.
This is how this works. So we get more info dump about that, and we get more info dump about how Ariel is a sad who has a scar on her face. Oh, and her and Ben bond as they drive back to Ariel's house, essentially. So
yes.
Ariel has a scar on her face, which her mother hates and thinks is hideous and yells at her for going out of the house without makeup.
Yes. Oh my God. Her mother was the worst.
Her mother was... I was so confused about her mother because sometimes I was like...
She does a complete 180 later in the book. Yes.
Yeah. But at this point, Ariel's mother seems terrible. And we're kind of led to believe that her mom, like, abused her as a kid. That was the... like, physically abused, it was
so
implied.
purple prosy, you couldn't tell what happened.
Yeah. But something happened, and her face got two-facey.
Yeah.
Which, again, like, I don't actually know how bad the scar was, because it was so purple prose, but she has a burn scar on her face.
I don't think it was quite Deadpool, but... I think it was probably not noticeable.
I think it was probably like Phantom of the Opera in the Phantom of the Opera movie, where the mask comes off and it's like, oh, that's not that bad. Like, I think that's pretty much what it was.
Yes.
Like, this is not that bad. You're still Gerard Butler. Like, which again, this girl Ariel, she's like described as being so beautiful, and Juliet looks in the mirror and is like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. So like, yeah, again, it's very. You know, whatever. She's 18. She's allowed to be insecure about her little face scar.
Especially if her mom's a terrible person.
Yeah. Her mom has definitely, like, gaslighted her into believing that, you know, everyone hates her because of her face scar. And it's like, no, everyone hates you because you're weird and don't talk to people.
Yeah.
Anyway, all this happens. Jeriel gets up the next day after so much discussion of cheese and
a block of cheese.
No, here's the thing. It was cottage cheese. It was cottage cheese, but she kept describing it as a chunk. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you doing?
I totally missed the cottage cheese part. I thought she just took like a block of cheese.
I went back and looked because it was like, I was like, chunk of cheese? When did she eat a chunk of cheese? And then it goes, like, I went back and it was like, she's, like, listing things that are in the fridge. She's like, there wasn't much food in the fridge, just some expired cottage cheese. And I'm like, okay, how expired was this cottage cheese that you are describing it as a chunk? And she does so multiple times over the next, like, 8 chapters. She's like, I'd had nothing to eat aside from that chunk of cheese.
Chunk of cheese.
And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Maybe it was so expired it became a chunk.
I guess, but I'm just like, how long did you let that cottage cheese sit there? But she specifically says, she's like, it wasn't so bad. It tasted terrible, but it was okay. And I'm like, if it is cottage cheese, and if it has gotten to the point where it can be described as a singular chunk,
it's not good.
That's not okay.
You need to run away from that. It might come to life and kill you.
So, she eats the cheese. She goes to sleep. She gets up the next day. Her friend Ariel's friend Gemma picks her up to go to school. Gemma's like, oh my God.
Gemma is also the worst.
Gemma is the worst human. But again, this flip-flops back and forth too, because I don't know, maybe she's okay. Who knows? At the end, it's like, perhaps I had been misreading Gemma because of my own selfish desires. And I'm like, but were you? Because she does mean things to you.
She's not a good person to you. She calls you a freak because of your scars. But then
she tried to run you over with a car. we'll get there.
Find out what we find out about Gemma at the end, but then it's like, well, then was it the other thing that was making her say and do those things?
Yeah.
Because then that's also pretty hilarious to me, because
I don't know. Lot of confusion. So Gemma picks her up, berates her a little bit, and is like, oh my God, Ariel, I can't believe that you went on a date and didn't tell me. And she's like, it was a terrible date and I nearly got killed. And Gemma's like, yeah, Dylan's trouble. Stay away from him. And Jeriel's like, well, what about you? What's going on with your life? Is it that she's seen that she has the pink glow at this point, right?
Yes, I think so.
Because she gets picked up and Gemma has the magic pink glow. So she's like, oh, gosh, she's one of the true love.
I found the soulmate,
So she's got to figure out who she's supposed to be matched up with. And Gemma's like, well, there is a boy in my life, and I don't want to tell you about all of it yet, but, like, there's definitely a guy. And
there's... It's like trying so hard to be vague and mislead us onto who
on multiple levels.
What is happening.
On multiple levels, as it turns out by the end. So they stop at this coffee shop, and they get out, and then who walks in but Jeriel's savior from the night before, Ben. Oh my gosh, Ben. But what's this? Ben has a pink glow too. Oh my gosh.
Oh no.
Oh no. Ben and Gemma. Oh my god. So Gemma kisses Ben on the cheek and is like, oh my gosh, this is the guy that I was talking about and we've been hanging out. And Ben's like, weird. So Jeriel's like, I've got to get them together because they're in true love and they're meant to be. And I'm like, but
it's going to be hard work because Gemma's kind of awful and Ben is not.
Right. And also, they seem to, Ben seems to actively dislike Gemma.
Yes.
And also, you would think that she would not be really super sold on this whole true love thing. Because of
her experience.
But she's like, no, they're in true love and they must be together. It's the only way.
There's nothing better than true love.
I'm like, but obviously not. Because,
your true love got you dead.
Real dead.
Super dead, and now you're living this existence that you hate.
Right. Which we have to hear about all the time, how much she hates it.
And I think also we kind of skipped the fact that she is, Juliet is supposed to be able to contact the ambassadors of light in this body. And her contact within the ambassadors is Nurse. Which I understand they wanted to really hammer home that this was a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but could we have not come up with a different name for this character other than just Nurse?
Right, even if we are to assume that, Juliet, because whatever because the thing that is the ambassador is not the same as Juliet's nurse. It took over Juliet's nurse's body for a little while, and now it talks to Juliet in the nurse's voice in order to be comforting. So, it's not, which is what I'm saying about there are either 5 or 100 characters in this book. Because it is her nurse, but it isn't her nurse, but sometimes it is, but it's still called nurse. But, even if Juliet, even if we're going with Juliet's just going to call it nurse because that's what she knew it sort of as in her life. It's but didn't that character have a name? And this is
I don't buy that she just called her nurse her whole life.
And this is what I'm getting to with this is a bad adaptation, is that the reason I like adaptation so much is because I think it's really interesting and fun to see someone take something that we are all familiar with and answer questions about it and be like, okay, so what was the nurse like? What was the nurse's deal? That's a question that we could answer about Romeo and Juliet. But this doesn't do that. This is just what if we just pretended that end was wrong and then we just did a completely different thing, but then we still said it was related to Romeo and Juliet. So it's not a good adaptation, it's not a good retelling, it's not a good continuation. It's not answering any questions that I had about the original source. It's just coming up with a bunch of new bullshit questions that nobody ever had.
It's like the person, it's like Stacey J went and saw the cast list and summary of a production of Romeo and Juliet in a playbill and was like, I could write a story around that.
Actually, you know what this is exactly like, and this is what I was thinking the entire time I was reading this? This is exactly like when I was in high school and in English class, sometimes we would start some joke about hey, what if Sylvia Plath was a vampire? That'd be cool, right? And then we'd joke about that in English class. So cool. That's it's not something you don't build a novel out of that. It's just a joke from English class. You don't need to do this. Oh my god.
Except how many people? 10,000 people have read this book, at least on Goodreads, so.
Well, I guess she did need to do it then. I just didn't need to read it. It's fine.
Yeah.
So, we get to school. Honestly, I don't care about any of the bullshit that happens in school.
No.
It is all very boring.
That's the part of these books that I dislike, is like the need for the main character to maintain
the facade.
A high school life. Yeah. Like, she actively admits that, like, she doesn't care what happens when she's gone.
Well, she wants to make...
Other than that, she kind of wants to make Ariel's life better. Yeah,
she wants Ariel's life to be better. Mm-hmm. But... Like, I don't know.
But even when she's in fear for her life, she's still like, let me go to that place where that guy's for sure going to be for 8 hours today. Like,
so, essentially, the next, like, several chapters are Jeriel goes to school, tries to get Gemma and Ben together. Ben and Jeriel keep having cute little conversations.
And Dromio is there being
annoying. And that goes on for a while. Also, they're doing a production of West Side Story, which...
Because LOL.
Okay.
Also, a fun thing about this book is that the Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare was actually written because Romeo was friends with Shakespeare and told Shakespeare his story.
Right.
And so...
And Juliet is very annoyed about it because it's wrong. But we don't...
And Romeo always quotes it at her.
We don't really get told how it's wrong, which...
Yeah, that's
true. We'll get to later. To
me, it seems exactly the same.
Well, we'll get to it in a minute. But so eventually, Jeriel Gemma's little love aura becomes red. So she's like, oh my gosh, she's like really committed. Oh, also, I don't know if we mentioned the thing that Romeo is attempting to do is to get one of the true lovers to kill the other one. Did we say that?
Oh, right. Yeah, in order to make evil things evil.
Yeah, that's like his whole deal is like, so Juliet's trying to hook him up. Romeo's trying to get one of them to betray the other and kill the other and become a mercenary.
Like how he betrayed Juliet.
Yeah. So now Jeriel is very worried because she's like, oh shit, like Ben is in trouble because Gemma is his true love, and Gemma's a terrible person who obviously would betray her true love in order to gain immortality because she's a bad person.
Yeah.
So
There's so much girl hate in this book. It's wonderful.
Well, to be fair, the girls are terrible. Like
Yeah.
And the boys are. And everyone is. It's fine.
You know, just when it comes to men, you can't trust your fellow female at all.
No. Well, because then we get a whole bunch of like, Gemma is mad at Jeriel because she thinks she's trying to steal Ben and is trying to use Dylan, who Gemma has a thing with apparently, which I thought what was going to end up happening was that Gemma was Romeo's true love.
Oh, yeah.
And that they together were working to like get Juliet to betray Ben, who was her true love. I thought that was the situation.
Because there were a couple.
Because that
moments
would have made some sort of sense that this girl who is supposed to be best friends with this other girl is behaving in this way, in this manner.
Yeah.
So, blah, blah, blah. We go on. There's more of this teenage drama. Eventually, Ben is like, I love you to Jeriel. And Jeriel's like, oh my god, I love him too. But like, I can't remember what voice I was doing for her.
But like...
No, that was more Gemma.
I think it was that one. Oh, dang it. Well...
I think it was more like ethereal, like... Anyway.
Okay, let's stop recording, rewind, and listen and see what the voice was.
I think it was like almost a bad English accent, but not quite, which doesn't really make sense because like she's Italian. But anyway.
Okay, so let's go forward from here with a
bad
Italian accent. It's me, Julieta.
I'm like, what will I do? Now it's kind of becoming Transylvanian.
Oh no. Well, she's just
she's so worldly.
Mercurial. Yeah. Just...
Okay, so Juliet is like, I love Ben, but also I want him to be safe, and also he can never love me because this isn't my body and I don't have a body, and I'm so sad. And also during all of this, I forgot to mention,
And also the plot.
Romeo has been like, hey babe, I have a magic spell that will turn you into a normal fucking person, I guess. I don't really know.
Yeah, because apparently our contracts are up with the ambassadors and mercenaries, and they're just gonna like shovel us into hell after this assignment. So,
but if we do this magical spell together with true love between us, then we get bodies back, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, his whole thing is like, love me again,
so we can have bodies.
But in the next 24 hours, please. Yeah. So we can have bodies. And I'm just like,
okay.
It's such a weird thing, like, love me again.
No.
There's a lot that goes into it. I know that, like, in your life, you instantly fell in love with her the first time.
And she with you.
Yes. And so that did work the first time, where you could just kind of command her to love you. But now she's a little bit wiser to you, Romeo. She's not going to just, oh, okay, let me just flip that switch again. I'm romantically in love with you.
Right. It's a very... Also, there are some ghosts.
Oh my god, the specters.
So there's like these two, like...
This book is such a hot mess. Also, there's some ghosts, Em says.
So there's like these two ghost specter things that keep appearing to Romeo and Juliet that are their dead bodies.
They're OG bodies,
except Romeo's is rotting. Juliet's is not. Juliet just looks like a 14-year-old girl, which...
No, it has like a hole in her where she stabbed herself.
Yeah, you're right.
There's like a big old fucking hole.
But aside from that...
Not like a stab wound, just a gaping hole.
So they keep like showing up and kind of chasing them, and Juliet keeps being like, love, you must trust love. Love is love.
Just love.
And love. Me love you. Love. And I'm like, okay. Like, you're just saying love and random nouns at this point. Like, random pronouns. Like, you need to... She love. He love. It wumbo. You wumbo.
You
he,
wumbo.
She, it
he,
wumbo.
She, it wumbos. Oh my god.
So this is happening.
And then Romeo's is like just running around on all fours.
Romeo's is like essentially, have you seen the show Big Mouth?
Yeah.
Okay, I picture Romeo's
as like the puberty
the puberty monster, the old one. The hormone monster. Sorry, not the puberty monster.
Oh yeah, that's what it is.
The hormone monster that's like the real jank hormone monster. That's how I'm picturing Romeo. Where like it's real creepy looking, but he just wants to be nice and have fun. Like,
we'll have to remember to. Oh yeah, that's it.
That's how I picture Romeo's spirit ghost in this book.
It's so gross.
Where it's just like kind of falling apart, but it's doing its best. So all of that is going on. None of it really matters. Ben and Juliet want to be in love, but Ben is kind of technically in love with Ariel because it's her body, but like Ariel also doesn't really exist at this point, so
yeah, there's a lot of weird like who would be in love with who.
Yeah, like Juliet's like, if I was in a different body, in my own body, would Ben still love me? Would Ben recognize me? Mm-hmm. Or would Ben just be in love with Ariel?
And Nurse comes around and is like, well, Ariel will your love for Ben will change Ariel so that she will be able to love Ben also.
Which that is terrible.
Which
I hate it.
I don't. Yeah, and I'm just. That's not comforting at all either to her. No. I'm sure. Like,
well, because that's the whole thing with the ambassadors is they're like, oh, you have to be all selfless and whatever, but also not really, because as it turns out, like we said, they're like angel vampires where they're feeding off of love.
Yes, they need the love to keep them powerful and immortal.
Yeah. Anyway, so all of this is going down. There's also a bunch of bullshit with Romeo, little intermezzo's where Romeo meets up with various things and plots and is busy being evil, but it could have easily been taken out and it wouldn't have affected the plot at all.
We didn't need it, especially if he was getting a sequel. It's whatever.
So where the fuck are we even in this plot?
Ben says I love you to her, and she says I can't love you back because, well, I love you, but I can't tell you because then Romeo will come kill you.
So
she runs away.
at some point, when do they have the fight? Is that before or after? That's after the love confession,
That's after.
right?
After he's, yes, because
they have the fight. Okay, so they're at theater practice.
Right?
Yes, because they're at...
Or is that when he runs after her in the rain because she ran away from the principal because they got in a fight?
Fuck.
It doesn't matter. There was also a fight.
There was a fight where Romeo tried to fuck with Jeriel and Ben saw it and pulled him off of him, and there was some punching. There was some light punching.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and they all got escorted to the principal's office except for Jeriel ran away randomly into the rain, and then Ben was somehow able to follow her and got expelled.
Well, he confessed his love, and then maybe she runs after... I don't know. She runs after him at some point. There's a lot of running after each other.
The running after him is after they go to the meeting. No, it's
before the meeting. Because
she hitchhikes home. She hitchhikes home and her mom picks her up.
Yes.
And then, yes.
Mm-hmm. She hitchhikes home. Her mom picks her up. Her mom is suddenly the best mom ever. Like, ever. She's so sweet, so supportive.
Mm-hmm.
Jeriel's like, oh, I get it now. My mom is saying these things because, like, she loves me and wants to protect me, and that's all. And she's just not good at expressing it. But also her mom is very good at expressing everything and is like, it's
a completely different person.
She's like, you can do whatever you want. You're great. You can go after this boy. He's fine. You seem fine. Use a condom. We're going to have a good, like, really actually very good discussion about birth control right now because I'm a good parent. And, like...
Yeah.
I was like, and also we find out that Ariel's face got scarred because her mother was moving a pot of water from the boiler to the sink and, like, tripped and spilled the water on her face, I think.
I think she was carrying her?
Maybe, but that's how her face got messed up.
And she was kind of drunk, and so...
Right, but it was a total accident. There was no abuse whatsoever, so it's fine. They're fine. Their relationship is beautiful now.
And she's like, so the mom was like, I've always been standoffish because I thought you hated me for what I did to you because when you were a little baby in the hospital, I wasn't allowed to touch you while you were in pain, and then I saw in your eyes that you decided to hate me then. And Juliet's like, I thought you always hated me because... Well, I guess Jeriel's like, I thought you always hated me because you had me too young and blamed me for all of your life's problems, and also because you called me ugly without makeup, like, probably on a regular basis, and said I would never have a boyfriend, and I only have one friend, and what was I supposed to believe? You're kind of closed off.
Her mom is like, I didn't do that.
Yeah. Her mom's like, I never did
and
that.
Honestly,
like, you never once called me beautiful.
I kind of believe the mom at this point. I'm like, maybe she didn't. Maybe this was all in her head. I don't know, because it's such a 180. It's like...
Yes, and the author's like been kind of giving us these asides that didn't amount to anything, that were like, Ariel's memories have become really buried, and I cannot discern them like I would normally be able to do with a host. It's really weird, but then, like, it never means anything.
She's clearly repressing some terrible thing that happened to her.
Yeah, which, again, maybe in the sequel.
I don't know.
But
anyway, so...
It's so stupid.
Jeriel has this conversation with Ariel's mom, who gives her permission to run after Ben. She takes her mom's car, goes to find Ben. Or she calls Ben first. And Ben is like... It's Ben's sister-in-law, who suffers from that problem that some characters suffer from, where they have no characterization aside from being really invested in getting people together. Like, his sister-in-law, who has never met her, is like, you're great. Ben's great. You guys should fuck, essentially.
Yeah, you should be patient and wait for him, because you totally deserve to be together.
You guys are the best couple I've ever seen in my life. And it's like, but you haven't.
Yeah. They've never been together before.
Right. They're not together now. They weren't together prior. And you've never met her. Like, why are you doing this?
They've only known each other 2 days.
But the sister-in-law is like, oh, he's in the other room talking to Gemma. And then she goes to get him, and Gemma and him have left. So Ariel's like, or Jeriel's like, fuck. Gemma's gonna kill him. Like, this is Romeo turned her.
Romeo got to
her. He's toast. So she goes chasing after them in the car after getting permission from her now wonderful mother.
Who lets her do anything. Oh my god.
And respects her decisions. So she goes after him. She figures out where they're at through, thinking. And she gets there and she goes like towards the barn to get to them, and then Gemma tries to fucking run her over with a car.
Which, okay, that is not at all skewing Gemma's personality into being hateful because you want her boyfriend.
Right.
That is like just straight up, she tried to kill you for no reason. She tried to murder you.
Again, like I guess maybe because this is all about immortal souls, so like we don't care about murder, but like I do actually care about murder. Like that girl tried to murder that other girl, and that other girl tried to murder the guy and succeeded. So like everybody's murdering people, but nobody cares. But
no one cares. It's just all about love. It was all all in the name of love. So, free pass.
So Gemma tries to straight up run over Jeriel. Ben pulls her out of the way and is like, oh my god, I can't believe that Gemma tried to murder you. And it's like, yeah, I can't either, because that's a legitimately insane thing to happen.
Because that is something you need to call the police about.
They have a talk and decide that they're in love. Mm-hmm. And I think Jeriel like straight up tells him at this point that she's in love with him. But also they can't be together. And a lot of that sort of back and forth happens. And I don't care. Yes. And
and at this point you're like, there's 100 more pages of this book.
At this point I was like, this is the end of the book, right? No, I'm at 60%. This is insane.
What else can happen?
A lot, it turns out. Yes. So they go to the meeting the next day about whether or not who should be expelled. And at this point, one of the grossest things in this book happens.
Oh my god.
And that is, so it turns out, like, Jeriel's kind of, like, figured out that, like, Gemma and Ben might not be the ones who are true love. Gemma's true love is someone else who she hasn't been able to see their glowy glow yet. And it turns out at this meeting, that person is the 22-year-old student teacher who student teaches them. And that's okay.
Yeah, it is just mentioned like, well, Gemma was 18 now, so I guess that's fine.
But he's like, his glowy glow is still like pink because he's not really sure about it. It's like, yeah, he probably shouldn't be because he
probably shouldn't
is a student teacher, and that is a student. And he needs to not be having romantic conversations with her or whatever else they're doing. And here's the thing.
Should never have gotten into that situation.
Should never have been in the situation to have a pink glowy glow with her. And
yes.
We are told at the beginning of the book that the only way that Gemma communicates with boys is by hooking up with them. So, like, I don't feel comfortable with saying that this was a chaste relationship before. Like, I'm like, okay, gross.
Yeah.
I'm not...
Well, and then we find out a little bit later that, like, Gemma goes to his house to confess her love to him. Like, what do you think happened there to make him convinced that they were soulmates? Because at the next time we see him, he's, like, bright red or whatever because they
are soulmates.
Assumably consummated their love. I don't know.
Because that's the thing with the whole true love thing. I don't know what the rules are, but there's a lot of talk about how you have to choose your true love and you have to commit to them and whatever. And I'm like, okay, whatever, gross.
How far is the commit?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they just like did the Disney kiss thing and that turned his glowy glow red, but it's gross either way. 'Cause he's a teacher. I mean, like, student teacher is still a teacher at their school. Like,
it's still a position of power over her.
And I mean, like, it's not like he's helping to direct the musical that she's in, which is also gross. And like, she is in his class. Like, it's gross. Like,
yes. And she is 18, but this is like a huge, like, she's a high school senior. He is a college senior. Like, that's huge amount of life experience difference.
And I'm really sorry that this podcast has just turned into us shaming teen adult relationships, but that's where we're at with these books, guys.
I think that's still a message that needs to be spread, apparently. Like don't
teens
do it.
Don't have relationships with adults. Like, you're a teen.
Yeah,
they're an adult. If you're a teen and you're listening to this podcast and your 22-year-old student teacher is like, I think I might be in true love with you. Like, just, no, he can wait if you guys are actually meant to be.
That is true.
He can wait until you get out of college.
Wait until you're not in a working relationship. Yeah.
Like, anyway, so that happens. So that was gross. And we also find out at this point that Ben has already been expelled because he came to this school. He was like a new kid at school at the beginning of this book. And we knew all of this stuff, that like he was in trouble at his last school. He beat up some guy because that guy like tried to beat up his pregnant girlfriend. So Ben like tried to defend her until the police could get there. Although we only know that from Ben's point of view. Like, this is all from...
So really, yeah, he could have
just... Because another thing that Ariel's mom points out is like, yeah, violent people usually have excuses for why they're violent. That doesn't mean they're not violent and possibly a problem, and maybe you shouldn't want to be around that person or like commit to that person until they work that out, which is a very good point that Juliet then, instead of thinking, hey, yeah, she's probably right, I should maybe pump the brakes, she goes, oh my gosh, I'm a violent person because I want to kill Romeo. And I'm like, that's not at all what she said in any way, shape, or form. You haven't done anything violent in this entire... What are you talking about?
No.
Because Juliet's gone back and forth on whether or not she wants to kill Romeo herself or just let him, like, go to hell, or, like, what exactly she wants to happen with Romeo.
What she can do to fix the situation.
So...
So he gets expelled from school because of his criminal past, but like he was cleared of all charges.
And also that happened before he attended this school, and also it's a public school, and I don't think, like, I don't know.
I don't know how that, like, you don't get a permanent record. Like, that's not something that, like...
Yeah, it was just, you know, they needed to expel Ben, and because at this point, Dromio is like, I did it, because originally Gemma was like conspiring to tell a lie, and then Dromio's like, oh no, like Ben and Jeriel were provoked, like it was my fault, and he like takes the fall because he's had a come to Jesus moment.
Yes, but nothing happens to him, and Ben doesn't get unexpelled.
Right. So what was the point? I don't know.
Who knows?
So then, I think it's the play is the next kind of big thing, right?
Yes, the play happens and shit goes crazy.
So the play happens and it's West Side Story, and Juliet Jeriel is portraying Bernardo, except as a girl, so it's called Bernadette, except she's understudying essentially. She was doing the scene painting.
Because Gemma was supposed to be the character, but Gemma went to go confess her love to her adult student teacher.
So Jeriel is left to do the part, and in the fight scene, Dromio just straight up stabs her. Because he thinks it is better that they just die and are just dead.
Or at least that
Juliet said, rather than possibly getting turned into a mercenary or getting dragged to hell by her soul ghost thing, because he thinks that's what's going to happen. So as an act of mercy, he kills her, which we then find...
And his body is like kind of rotting and stuff at this point too, because neither of them have their full powers for whatever reason. That's not ever, I guess. It's not explained why he doesn't have his full powers, but she doesn't have her full powers. I think it's just because
their contract's up. Like, I think...
Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
But this is then the point...
It's not really fully explained.
The book that I hated this book, but it wasn't really the book's fault. Chapter 22, where Romeo pulls out a gun and does the school shooting.
Just, a casual school shooting.
In the theater. So, like, for this, to some extent, like... This was written in 2011. We didn't have this climate where, like, we were all kind of, I guess, it's happening every other day, and we're all kind of tired of school shootings. But first off, like, I started tearing up at this point. Because, like, which is ridiculous because, like, I don't care about any of the people in this book. But, like, I don't know. Like, just the idea of, like, high school kids getting gunned down isn't... Like, I don't want that to be used as a set piece in a YA fantasy novel. Like, it was gross.
And for no other purpose than to, like, push the plot along in a way that could have been done literally any other way. Like, he's basically just trying to cause a distraction so that no one notices Juliet is bleeding out.
Like, just do the Phantom of the Opera thing. Make a fucking chandelier crash. Like, why do we have to do a school shooting?
Yes. Or set a small fire. Or,
literally
like,
anything else. But, like...
Yeah.
So that was gross, but, like...
Or even just yell fire.
Yeah,
like,
you've got options, man. Like, come on.
Yeah, it was a very gross choice.
But again, it was... Like, I don't want to ding the book too much for that specifically because it wasn't the atmosphere. Like, it wasn't written in the atmosphere that we are currently in. So, I mean, I feel like it was way grosser than... Like, if I had read it in 2000... Yeah,
not that school shootings were ever tolerable. But it was...
It's like... It just feels...
It certainly wouldn't have gone down today if this was published today.
It's like when you see, like, a movie made pre 9/11 and the Trade Center is still in the New York skyline. Yeah. It was like that, where I was like, oh, this was written at a different time. Like, you know?
Yeah.
So that happens. Chaos ensues. Mm-hmm. And, God, what...
Ben is waiting for her at the back door because he said, meet me at intermission because I'm going to want to say goodbye to you because I'm getting shipped off to live with someone in LA.
Yeah, like his aunt or something. So she runs off to go to him and is, like, dying. And
she, like, crawls her way to the back door somehow.
And he's like, oh, my God, you're dying. And she's like, you gotta go. You gotta get to safety.
Get out while you can.
And he's like, wow, this is really reminiscent of that time in the car where you kept telling me to do a thing and I didn't do the thing and then a bad thing happened.
And I just didn't do it.
But so she keeps being like, you need to go, and he keeps being like, well, yeah, but, like, you're dying, so, like, we should probably deal with that, which, like, fair.
Yeah.
And so, like, I kind of skipped over this part with Nurse. So Nurse comes back, and we talked about, like, you know, she has some conversations with Juliet, and one of those conversations is, like...
She comes back in Gemma's body.
Oh, yeah. So Gemma has been, like, kind of possessed by Nurse this whole time, which could explain some of the behavior, but not all of it. And also...
Yeah, like, was it Nurse that was trying to run over Juliet
like, that's
in the car?
Not cool.
We don't know.
But,
was Nurse the one that was calling her an ugly freak? We don't know.
Nurse... I hope so. Nurse is just like, this little bitch, I'm done with her. Like...
I've had to deal with her for 700 years.
I'm so sick of her shit. Because this is the thing. Nurse is like, you can't go on to the good possible...
You don't get the good
ending because of a thing. And I can't tell you what that thing is because I'm cryptic. And that's what we ambassadors do. And I'm like, that's a choice that you've made. And you could just not do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so Nurse gives her a vision of her first death. At which point Juliet, from Nurse's perspective. So it's essentially, it plays out exactly like the end of Romeo and Juliet. And Juliet's like, oh my God, Romeo didn't kill me. I killed myself. And I was like, wait, you didn't know that?
Yeah. I was also very confused on that point. I was like, I thought that's what did happen.
She's been blaming Romeo this whole time. And I thought it was like, oh, I'm blaming Romeo because he caused this. But apparently she literally thought that Romeo stabbed her. Was what she thought.
But that was not made apparent at all.
So Juliet has this big revelation of like, oh, I hate myself because I killed myself, and I've carried the guilt around these 700 years, though I repressed it. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense and is gross. No. And also, like, because essentially her whole ability to move on is that she has to forgive the people who caused her death. And I'm like, no, you should still blame Romeo. Like,
you were still a 14-year-old girl and he was still 18, and
it is still upsetting.
There's some manipulation there going on. He wanted to do the nasty with you, but you had to be married to do it, and no one wanted you to get married.
We also get this whole thing from Romeo about how, like, his whole reason for doing the whole thing in the first place was that, he thought that they had no other options because, like, they couldn't be together and they wouldn't survive in the world, you know, without a job and whatever.
They had no money.
And also, he was promised by the mercenaries that, like, Juliet would have a good afterlife, essentially. So he thought he was being merciful, and that is... a stupid, stupid thing to think if you're arranging
he's got
someone's
a big
death.
issue with that.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So this happens.
She's like, I have to forgive myself. So I did. And I felt super powered because of it.
Yeah.
And, like, she suddenly, like, she's like, this huge weight is lifted off her shoulder. Like, honey, that's 700 years of baggage you're carrying around. You don't just get to say, like, oh, okay, I did it now.
I'm good. I'm perfectly self-actualized. I don't need therapy, Mom. Jeriel's dying. Mm-hmm. Ben's been stabbed or is shot or something. He's dying too. Who cares?
He's taking her to the hospital, and their car is hit by Dromio, and Dromio's creator, the friar character from Romeo and Juliet, the play, who has taken on the appearance of Dylan's best friend, Jason.
Yeah. So they're both dying.
So Friar Jason
has killed them. Nurse Gemma shows up and is like, okay, I'm going to give you some options. Option 1 is like, you did it. You became self-actualized. You get to go be an angel vampire with me. And
like me.
And she's like, no, I really don't want to do that because Ben. And then the nurse is like, okay, option 2.
Because Ben can't go.
Option 2. I'm going to reset the timeline to back when you first...
Another universe,
to when you became Ariel, and you get to do it again and do it correctly and just focus on the Gemma and the creepy teacher thing. And then you'll be done and everything will be lovely and Ben will be fine. And also, all of those kids who were traumatized by a school shooting won't have gone through that. And
that would be great.
And Jeriel's like, nah. But also, this is the point where Nurse is like, hey, there's alternate timelines. And I'm like, it is way too late in this book.
Yeah,
to
she
be
just
pulling
throws it
this
out there.
shit. Like,
yeah, I will send you to an alternate universe where you won't have him as a soulmate, but like,
yeah, this was like some,
you'll still get to do your job.
This is like some Lost Writer season 6 bullshit. Like,
it was dumb.
You can't introduce alternate universe as like the last thing in the book.
It's like the same thing as like I woke up with Audrey.
Yeah. And it gets into too many questions that we can't dive into. Like, we don't have time for this. We have like 5% left of this godforsaken book. We don't have time to get into like what this means. Is there like so like there's the version of the world where everything went terrible and there's like a version where everything was cool. I don't know. It's just a mess. So Juliet's like, nah, don't want that either.
Yeah, I want to have loved and be loved.
And then she dies. And then, like, she follows her ghost spirit, I think. The ghost spirit shows up.
Well, she, like, reaches out to the ghost spirit as she's dying. Yeah. Yes.
And then we get the last bit.
Oh, my God. It's so stupid.
Where Juliet awakes in 1304 Italy and is like, fuck, I'm in a tomb. Help, help, help.
Help me get out.
And then who shows up but Benvolio?
Oh!
Who saw that shit coming?
Oh my God.
And Benvolio looks exactly like Ben and is Ben? ?
Yeah, somehow.
And Juliet's like, oh cool, you saved me. And Benvolio's like, hey, Romeo ran off with your cousin Rosaline because she's pregs. And Juliet's like, okay, that's cool. And Benvolio's like, weren't you guys married? And Juliet like is like, yeah, fam, but it's cool. And Benvolio's like, hey.
It was secret because the friar's office lit on fire.
So all the marriage
proof of their marriage was gone.
And then Juliet's like, hey, I think we should be in love now. And Benvolio's like, I guess I'm okay with this. And then they make out, and that's the book.
And then he's like, I really am okay with this.
Because she's like, I think it'll take it'll take more than 3 days this time. And then they make out, and he's like, nah, fam, like,
it'll take less than 3 days. We in
wink,
love.
Wink. And also, she's 14. And this, again, gets into the, like, creepiness factor, because, okay, like, and the whole problem of, like, how do you measure age with immortals, right? Because it's like, her body is 14. She lived through an alternate timeline for 700 years. So, like, from one angle, it's creepy for her to end up with Ben or Benvolio, because she is significantly older than them. From another another way, it's creepy for Benvolio to end up with her. Looking at it another way, it would have been creepy if she got her original body back and then showed up to Ben and was like, "Hey, baby, it's me, that girl you're in love with." And Ben was like, "But you're 14." So that would have been creepy too. And then also, like,
there was no happy ending to
Romeo is like, looks like he's 16 to 18. I don't remember. But has lived for 700 years and is trying to, and then like, Juliet has been in like stasis sort of, so she's really only lived for like 20, so he's way older but wants her to be in love with him. It's just, there's too many layers of like who's actually however many years old. Yes. I just feel like none of them should be
appropriate. Yeah, no. They should have all just said, you know what, let's just get a hard restart on all of this. Let's pretend none of us know each other and we'll part ways. Right.
We'll go do our own thing.
Then we get this stupid coda at the end where it's Romeo.
Oh my god, I don't think I even read this.
You didn't? Oh my god, okay.
Hold on.
So there's a coda.
I'm gonna go read it and Romeo then I'll react in real time. So just give me a minute. Because I went and I like researched the sequel because I wanted to know, but I totally missed. I was just so done. I didn't even like go forward one more page. I don't blame you. Hold on. Well, that was as dumb as the rest of the book.
It is very stupid. So in the coda, Romeo's body, so because he went against the mercenaries' rules by one, trying to break their contract with Juliet early and telling her secrets of the mercenaries, and two, trying to kill Juliet before the mercenaries could take her and get her power or whatever, he's being punished by, he's able to feel pain and other emotions, but he has the magic that was keeping his body rejuvenated is now lost, and so he's just like rotting away until he'll eventually just become a phantom spirit that floats around and haunts people, I guess. And so he crawls into some hole and he's really sad about it, and then an ambassador approaches him and says, you know, this is kind of controversial, but I would like to recruit you to our side. But before I fully do that, I have to give you this mission where I'm going to send you to an alternate universe where you are Dylan. You take over Dylan's body and you have to teach Ariel how to love, not that you have to go and be in love with her, it's that you have to get her to believe in love again by making her fall for you and then assumably fucking off after he like accomplishes this feat. But we're going to start from the moment where Ariel drives the car off the cliff. At
like the very beginning of the book. They couldn't have like rewound a little bit to like when Dylan took the bet or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
like
no, it had to be that moment.
Nah, it gotta be this one.
Where it would be at its most difficult. And so he says, I don't really want to become an ambassador, but I'll take that bet because it has to be better than being a ghost forever. Because then maybe I will serve my contract as an ambassador and then die and then have a happy ending that hopefully Juliet got.
So that's fun and
so
pretty dumb.
So stupid. It's just like,
and again, there's like literally no reason for these characters to be called Romeo and Juliet. Like, none.
No, they could have been anyone.
Like, just to do the Benvolio setup, like, that's why you did this to us? Like, why? Which, why? Again, that was like, you know, from the beginning, if you have any passing knowledge of Romeo and Juliet, and you're like, oh, hey, here's a book that's like a Romeo and Juliet adaptation thing, and there's a dude called Ben, like, of course he's gonna be fucking related to Benvolio somehow, like... I assume
that Juliet has constantly been saying, I feel like I know him. Right. I feel like I know him from somewhere. Where do I know him?
I assumed that, you know, none of this bullshit alternate universe thing was going to happen, and it would just be like, it would turn out that he was an ambassador too or something and was Benvolio. Like, you know.
I thought Ben was going to be Romeo's creator. I thought he was going to be the friar. Yes. But then I didn't know what was going to happen, if Juliet was going to really end up with Romeo. Because I knew the title of the sequel was, like, Romeo Redeemed or something. So I was like, oh, well, maybe she does end up back with Romeo. But no.
No, she ends up with Ben. No. Which, interestingly, this isn't the only Romeo-Juliet adaptation or, like, continuance or whatever I've read where Juliet ends up with Benvolio. Like, that's a pretty common... Like, yeah,
Huh.
like people.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, like I've read a couple other books where that happens, where, you know, like for whatever reason,
Fanfiction.net.
she's like, well, that's it. No, she's like essentially, you know, Benvolio gets like a lot of love from people who are kind of into the idea of Romeo and Juliet, but also think the two characters of Romeo and Juliet are fucking morons. So
Yep, here's one. Benvolio Montague is an enigma to none but himself, a modern take on Romeo and Juliet set in the same time period with a very important plot twist.
yeah, so
they wrote the fic.
Yeah, so there's precedent for that shipping, I guess, of,
That's
you
so
know,
funny.
it's got all of the good parts of the Romeo Juliet ship, you know, the star-crossed lovers from warring families, without having to deal with Romeo, because he's fucking terrible.
Yeah, not the best.
But yeah, on that kind of note, which of these characters did you most relate to?
Romeo, just because he got to kill everybody.
Cool.
Which is what I wanted to
Fair.
do. But not for any other reason. That was the only way I related to him. I don't go around seeking out relationships with 14-year-old girls. I promise. How about you?
There you go.
Which character do you relate to, Em?
Ariel's mother in chapter like 20 through 25.
Where she was good
Where
mother,
she was
not
good
bad
mom.
mother.
Yeah. And
Okay.
wanted to like share her knowledge of like birth control and how to recognize
That was
abusive
pretty cool.
relationships. I was like, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, she's nice and supportive.
Which was also, good segue for once, my silver lining for this book was that it had some good messages in terms of like that sort of thing, where it was like,
Yeah.
hey, it's okay if you want to have sex as a teenager, but do it safely. It's okay.
Yeah, there was some girl hate, but there was no sex shaming.
Yeah. Like, and it did, you know, discuss things pretty like openly and frankly in that regard. But all of the rest of the messages were so terrible. Like, hey, it's fine to, you know, be in love with your 22-year-old student teacher. And also,
No,
you
it's
should
not.
forgive the guy who led to your death. And, you know, it's not so bad if you kill people if you have a reason.
But only if the reason is love.
Or they really, really pissed you off with their bet. That's fine, too. You can kill them.
That is also
then.
a good reason to kill.
That's good. What about you, silver lining?
I liked that I didn't know how it was going to end.
Fair. It did take some sharp
Yes.
turns.
Because especially with a YA, you feel like, you know, in the first third of the book, you're like, okay, so here's going to be the rest of the beats of the story, and like, I don't really need to continue reading this, but I have to because I'm doing a podcast on this. So, but this book, I kept thinking it would go one way, and then it would like subvert it in a completely stupid and unnecessary way, and that really made me angry. Like, I'm not happy with the ending, but I didn't know alternate universes were going to come into play.
That was a shock. Oh jeez.
Yeah, what a mess. So, I had chosen, I was really thinking hard about a rather be reading for this week, because this book was so bizarre. Like, I don't know if I've really read a book kind of quite like this, and I didn't want to just go for like a retelling or something.
Oh, that's what I went for, so it's fine. I got that covered.
But there is a book on my bookshelf, and I haven't read it yet, but I own a copy of it, and I keep meaning to get to it, but it's a really big book, so it might be a minute. Called Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, which is a story about a woman named Ursula who is keeps being reborn into her life, I believe, and it kind of explores the way that our choices affect our lives. And I think like she makes choices and ends up dying, but then gets reborn and gets to make a different choice to see. So I think it's kind of like a butterfly effect, but then also has this rebirth
theme
plot that Juliet Immortal tried to do. So that was mine. If it's good, let me know. I'd be like, send an email or at me on the Twitters.
Yeah, that sounds good. I might have to check that out. My pick this week is pretty much just any good retelling of anything, because
of anything.
I just really, like literally anything. Like I really do love like adaptive works, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah,
and I've
for sure.
talked about this, I think, on a different podcast that I guessed it on, but yeah, like any sort of book that's like, hey, it's this fairy tale, but we're gonna do it in modern times, or we're gonna do it, you know, we're just gonna retell it and explain all the things that don't make any sense. Like, super into that. Love all of that. If I have to pick one specifically, my favorite for a while has been Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, which is a really lovely retelling of the story of Achilles and the Iliad. So that's my pick. And if not that one, literally any retold fairy tale or Shakespeare or fucking Jane Austen, anything. Like
anything. Even I would even suggest reading the original Romeo and Juliet before I would suggest reading this book, because romance.
Or maybe just like another Shakespeare play. Like, I don't know, go support your like local Shakespeare company, you know?
Yeah.
Do that instead of reading this book. I mean, obviously, if this sounds like a book you'd like, go check it out. You can, you know, buy the sequel and read that and tell us if it's terrible or not. Like, again, don't want to yuck anyone else's yum. And obviously, there's a book out there for everybody. This book was just
unless you're an adult who is into children.
Yeah, we do want to yuck that very heavily. That's not cool. If there is a stance we are willing to take on this podcast definitively,
it is that one. We are the leading podcast in not appreciating pedophilia.
So I think that's pretty much it for this fortnight.
Yeah, I'm definitely done with this book.
Cool. So next week I will not be joining you on the next episode. Beloved listeners. Instead, you're going to have a special treat, which is Anna not having to be interrupted by me every 5 seconds.
It was so hard, though, being the one that was like having to be in charge of the conversation of the podcast. It was just said a lot of things you normally say, and it felt really weird.
You are going to be covering...
Yes, Ready Player One by Ernest Cline with my friend Lindsay, who challenged me to read the book. I liked it the first time I read it and had a lot of different opinions the second time.
Cool.
So prepare for that.
So we've got the guest episode next fortnight, and then after that is going to be another rewind episode. We will be heading into our college years, I guess you could say, and trying to confront the books that we hated from those times. So I'm going to be going first, and I need everybody to let me explain before you all at me. We are going to be reading a book by...
Not a book.
Yeah. By Terry Pratchett.
Oh my god, no, you bitch! Is it Masquerade?
No, it's literally any Terry Pratchett book. I'm trying to pick a specific one. Because
I know I made you read Masquerade, and you were like, this is boring. But I was like, I thought you would like it because it's Phantom of the Opera.
I've never finished a Terry Pratchett book, but I own like 10 of them.
You're insane. Oh my god. Okay, let me see the ones I have on my shelf. Should I try? Can I like pick one I think you might like?
Well, here's the one I want to do. Because
okay, what's the one you want to do?
It's going to be coming out in December. I thought perhaps we could read Discworld number 20, Hogfather.
Hogfather is my favorite.
So again, I want to be very clear. What I am saying is that I have tried a couple times to read Terry Pratchett, and I could never get into it. So I'm considering it a book that I hated. And I know everybody loves Terry Pratchett. He's wonderful and beautiful and the best person who ever walked the earth. I get it. So I'm going to try to legitimately give this book a chance and actually get through the whole thing.
Yes.
And hopefully, once I get into it, I will actually like it. So
I hope so. Oh my gosh, then we can read all of them, and this could become a Terry Pratchett podcast.
As a Merry Christmas treat to us, my rewind is going to be Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. So
I am so
please don't at me about this, guys. I know he's really good. I know everybody loves him. Okay? Like...
When was the last time you tried to read a Terry Pratchett book?
In college.
Oh, in college. Okay,
yeah.
So it's been a while.
Yeah.
I think you'll like it.
Yeah. So check that out. We've got
I'm so
Ready
happy
Player
I'm
One.
filled with holiday cheer.
You're welcome. We've got Ready Player One coming up, and then Hogfather after that if you guys want to read along. If you do want to yell at me for not having ever read a Terry Pratchett book all the way through, you can tweet at us, at HateReadcast on Twitter, or email us, hatereadcast@gmail.com. We will happily read all of your protestations about how I'm a terrible person and a terrible reader and a bad science fiction and fantasy fan for never reading Terry Pratchett on this podcast when we get to that episode. So please tweet us your thoughts and opinions.
But don't tweet at me because I love Terry Pratchett.
Yeah. Just tweet our show, but specifically me.
Yeah. Make sure to direct all of hate towards M for this challenge.
As always, thank you to Ben Cope for the use of our theme song. You can find a link to his YouTube in our show notes.
Yes, and if you like what you're hearing in this episode and all of our others, feel free to subscribe to us on the platform you're using to listen to us. And if it is iTunes, or if it's not, if you just really like to use iTunes to rate podcasts, do that for us.
Yes.
5 stars.
If you guys could please rate us at 5 stars. I would like to point out that this episode we are recording on the day before our podiversary. So we have been doing this for a whole year. We know some of you guys come back and listen to us every week. We've, tracked you in our little statistics. We know who you are. This is
we know what city you live
in. So guys, if you've been listening to us, we would really, really, really appreciate it if you could go leave us a review in iTunes, because that is how we are found by other people who might listen to us.
Yes.
Cool. Time for a quote.
And in the words of Stacey J, a rose by any other name would still smell as impossible. Because it's Shakespeare. Get it, you guys?
You guys get it? It's so clever.
Smell is impossible. So stupid. Oh my god, dumb book.
I just got to the line. Romeo, I, in italics, will save the world. Oh, God.
It's so bad.